Again, welcome. I am Flor Diaz-Smith. I am the chair of the school board. I'm also going to ask my board members today that when they do a comment, we receive some input, that they also introduce themselves, because not everybody can see your nameplates. So if you, through the meeting, if you're going to make a comment, please say your name so everybody knows who you are. Welcome to our meeting. We're calling our meeting to order at 6:15. It's really nice to see everybody. We have a full agenda today, and I just want to say a few words. I hope that the tone that we set in this meeting today is that of kindness and of understanding of everybody. We're here to serve all our students. The board cares deeply about our community and all our students, and I hope that we can all model kindness to each other today through your comments and through your actions and how you present yourself today in this board meeting, and please be respectful of everybody. With that, I am gonna, the what? Can you can't hear me? Or they, oh, okay, can you hear me now online? Okay, okay, much better. Okay, sorry about that. So like I was saying, now we're gonna move right into our meeting with a couple of changes or adjustments to our agenda. First, we wanna move our executive session to right after 3.1, where the board will decide to take or not take the appeal. So we'll move the executive session so that can allow time for administrators, or for students and families to leave earlier and not have to wait through the meeting. Everybody okay with that? Okay, so could I have a motion to accept
She could speak on my phone.
as amended?
What is the problem?
Can you mute yourself, please? Okay. Could I have a motion to
I move that we amend the agenda
accept the agenda as
proposed.
amended? Okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
second, Chris.
Second by Daniel. You got it, Lisa? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we have an agenda. Now we're going to move into public comments. Are there any public comments not related to the appeal, whether it's online or in person? Please raise your hand. Not related to the appeal.
My question is, will we get a chance to speak before you take up the appeal? Will there be any public comment related to the appeal?
I'm looking at my lawyer.
No, I mean, that would be done during the appeal. So I'm Bernie Lambeck.
Hi,
and
Bernie.
Maybe,
Chris Winters.
and Chris, we've met before. I'm counsel to the school district and acting as counsel for the board today. So as you know very well, there's a petition to hold to hear an appeal, and there's going to be some discussion by the board about whether to take that appeal because it's discretionary. And if the decision is to take the appeal or hear the appeal, then there will be time for comment during that session, which would be an executive session, but it would include the folks that are petitioning and their supporters, as well as administrators. It would be a very large executive session. Does that answer your question?
It does. My concern is that if the board decides not to take up the appeal, no one is heard tonight, we're all going home.
Right. If the board doesn't take up the appeal, which is their prerogative, then a lot of people have written, the board has read those things, but there won't be time to make comments about these matters.
I wonder if it would be possible to have brief public comment on whether or not to take up the appeal that doesn't get into the details of the appeal itself, but it allows the folks here in this room to make the case for why you should take up this appeal.
I mean, we have the petition. We know why people want to have an appeal. I think the board knows that. I don't know how one can quite separate it out from the appeal itself. Maybe if 2 or 3 people want to address the issue of why the board should hear the appeal, that could be done. But it would have to be pretty limited because the real discussion would take place in the appeal if the board elects to hold that session.
Thank
So
you.
I guess 2 or 3 comments on that would probably be appropriate. It's not my call, but I'm thinking that's appropriate as counsel.
So go ahead, Chris, introduce yourself, and it's a minute and a half.
Sure, thank you very much. Chris Winters. I'm a parent of a couple of cross-country students. Having a lot of fond memories being back at Berlin Elementary. I served on the school board here for 5 years. We made a lot of tough decisions in this building, a lot of small decisions, a lot of big decisions. Also, as part of my background, I'm a professional bureaucrat. I've been in state government for almost 3 decades. I know about process. I know about appeals. I used to serve as counsel to various boards. I've been on boards where I've gotten counsel. I understand that you need to respect the process and follow the law. But I want to say something in my many years of experience in situations like this, that there's what's legal and there's what's right. And lawyers are going to be extremely risk averse. I'm a lawyer myself. They're going to tell you the safest path. And no offense to the other lawyers in this room, but that sometimes really removes the humanity from what you're trying to accomplish. There are dozens of young people and parents asking you for help. I want you to look at them tonight and not remove that humanity, bring some humanity back into the process, bring some common sense back into this. Dozens of young people who've been treated poorly. The process has failed them. They're seeking justice, and they just want to be heard. They want a fair shake for themselves. They want a fair shake for their coach. They're hoping they can get their coach back. So I'd ask you to please consider the process, consider the legal advice you're getting, which I'm sure is very good legal advice, and do what's just and fair for these kids and what's just and fair for Andrew Tripp. There are hundreds of your constituents looking at you and asking you to act on their behalf. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. We have a couple of other comments online, and I'm assuming, Deborah, you were first. Could you introduce yourself?
Sure, thank you. And this is not about the appeal, so I don't know, is that okay? Hi, my name is Deborah Bloom, and I am a Worcester resident. I have 2 children at Doty Elementary School, a 2nd grader and a 5th grader. I'm also the Worcester representative on the configuration committee. My comment is broad, but something I'd like folks to continue to keep in mind as we move into the conversation about configuration and potentially moving some students around. And so I've just been giving this a lot of thought. I've been reading what's happening on front porch forums. I've been trying to listen to my community, and I want to urge the board and folks within the communities to remind ourselves that what we really need to be focusing on first and foremost is the education of our students, and to put trust in our educators to help us make those decisions. That's the first point. My second point, which I'll make quick, is that at some point this will need to happen, and I am concerned, and I want to warn us against pinning it against each other. Not my kid. Turns into, well, it's going to be somebody else's kid in 2 years. So instead, to focus on how can we make this a positive transition instead of going into what I understand is human nature, which is defense and concern about our own children. So that's, sorry, my time's up. So thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And we had one more hand, Sophia.
My name is Sophia Amy, and I'm a parent of 2 kids at Doty. And I want to name a core issue, which is that voters cannot give informed consent about what they're voting on when the board still has not provided the information required for a decision of this magnitude. For months, community members have asked for basic data, a complete 5-school versus 3-school budget comparison, researched transition costs, unbiased educational and community impact analyses, evidence that this plan will not harm property values or deepen rural decline, viable alternatives, and written answers to hundreds of outstanding public questions, as well as your specific plan if communities vote no in January. Listening sessions become performative when the board does not actually answer the questions that emerge. And without thorough board responses before this plan advances, we are heading towards a vote without transparency or due diligence. Act 73 does not require closing small schools. The state is not forcing this timeline. The district is choosing it without presenting the necessary data. I'm asking the board to please pause and complete the rigorous due diligence required for a decision that may reshape our towns, damage our property values, and most importantly, upend our children's daily lives, and to release this full justification before asking us to vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Larrabee?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to ask about a vote of no confidence. What? Oh. So I really want to ask about like why you are doing this, because it really feels like you don't really care about what the students think, and you more care about what would be like better for you. Because it sounds like you're not really listening to the students and what we need. Like, because we need stuff and you're not listening to us. I have multiple people who would rather homeschool than go to a ton of different schools, and we do not want this. So I'm asking you to not do this and to step down from board member, because we don't want this and you shouldn't be doing this. This is not what we want, and this is not what we need. We need you to stop doing this and let us speak up against what we want. We don't want this. We don't like this. People are clapping. People like what I'm saying. We don't want this. We don't want this. And you have to listen to us. This is not what we want. You can't take away our schools just because you want to.
Thank you, Larrabee. Sonia and then Devon?
Hi, good evening. My name is Sonia Andrews, and I'm a community member in Calais. I would like to speak about the district's presentation of the recent community survey about the school consolidation. I have some training in that with the master's in the social sciences, and those questions were highly leading and asking for answers that were predisposed to school consolidation. That's not good data. That's terrible data, actually. Another community member ran and posted an independent analysis of the same raw responses using ChatGPT without the leading prompts, and their results showed something very different. There's widespread concern, anger, and alarm about this process moving forward as if the outcome were already predetermined. This in turn highlights a deeper problem. Any analysis produced by the district will inevitably be partial because the district and this board is analyzing data about its own preferred process. It's a self-licking ice cream cone. To restore trust and informed decision-making, I'm asking the board to authorize an independent review of all the survey data by a neutral third party. If it's going to influence our decisions, we need good data.
Thank you, Sonia. Devon?
Hi, thank you for giving me a chance to speak. I don't need to repeat anything. And I want to say thank you to everyone here for all the hard work on this process of considering configuration. And I guess the only thing I had to say, it's kind of a question, is just if there is going to be a decision made to do consolidation without a vote that includes like making a big change in the school structures, I'm concerned and wonder where that leaves all of the people on the board and the people making the decisions with trust, like where that leaves people's trust for your public service. I'm concerned that if something happens in a way where people aren't feeling very trusting, that's going to trickle down into the neighborhoods and the families, and it will impact the students. Even if their classroom experience is still positive, I do believe that lack of trust and conflict will impact the students. And because of that, I just urge you to take that into consideration and consider like perhaps slowing down the process to make sure that everybody's on board together, or as many people as possible that can be. Thank you.
Thank you, Devon. And we have one last, Kara? Oh, I got two.
Hi, thanks for taking my comment, and I want to echo the last, what Devin just said was I certainly really appreciate all of your work here for our district. I'm a teacher at U32. You know, I've been listening, and I for sure hear how strong people's feelings are about reconfiguration, and I recognize what a difficult decision is before the board. I had not actually read the Times Argus article until just today, and I really encourage. It was very sobering to me because of my position at U32. I also work in negotiations. I have experience with kind of understanding what $2.3 million looks like, and that's that was the increase. And I really just hope that the board can be really clear with the community about the trade-offs. We can hear how much people feel about schools. But at some point there's sort of this trade-offs that we're having to really understand, that $2.3 million worth of teachers is probably like 20 some teachers. And to think like what that would do to our district, what those kinds of losses would do to programs. And so I just hope that the board is able to communicate whatever those trade-offs are really clearly to the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. And one last one, Katie, and then we're going to move. Yeah. Katie?
Hi, I am a parent in Calais, and I'm also an educator who works in 2 small schools in 2 different districts. We are a family who moved here to this area for the small schools, and working in small schools myself, I know firsthand the huge benefits to students that small schools have. I see it every single day. Both of the schools I work at have equal or lower populations of students than Calais and Doty, and neither is talking about closing. One of the districts that I work in just went through a consolidation process. The process took multiple years, included many, many options on the table, and was years of meetings and conversations with community members, administrators throughout the district to make the decision. So the fact that we are having these conversations over such a short period of time and that the same information and ideas are being presented just doesn't fit with what I've seen happen in other districts. We also need to consider that the budget savings that are being projected are also, we're losing jobs. We have community members who are losing jobs. So are we really saving money in our community if we are taking out people who are employed in the community who are now not going to be making that money anymore? I just think this needs a lot more time and a lot more consideration to make a good decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead, and there's the mic there, and introduce yourself for everybody.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kevin Mata.
On the bottom, just push the bottom right there. Yeah, got it.
Good evening, board members. My name is Kevin Farrell. I'm with the U32 boys cross country team, and I would like to present our petition that we made. And below it says, I support the U32 cross country team when they say, we want our coach back, they have been subject to a misleading and harmful process where they have not been heard. We want our leaders to hear student voices. And below that, we have 347 student signatures. That's about 2/3 of the in-campus students and about half the total U32 students, including like the tech and yeah. You guys want to pass this around? Go for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Yeah, oops. Okay, board members, can you hear me? Okay, so I'm gonna ask that we make a motion and we move into executive session for the purpose of confidential attorney-client communication per VSA 1, VSA 313, provided it makes the required findings that public knowledge would clearly place the board at a substantial disadvantage. Could I have a motion? Diane moves it. A second? Second, Michelle. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, we're going to move into executive session of just the board right now. Okay, everybody, sorry, it took a little longer than we were hoping for, but here we are.
Just a second to grab a mic.
Okay, okay. 1 minute, can you hear us? Okay. So we're going to move in our agenda right to 3.1. Sorry, I'm just trying to move my... I'm waiting for everybody to come over. So 3.1 is the public complaint about the personnel. And the board is going to decide to, have some conversation about to take or not to take the appeal. We can have a motion on the floor, or we can just discuss. Diane, do you want to?
Yes, I can do the motion. We move to hear the appeal based on the first request, which was received on 11/19.
Thank you, Diane. Could I have a second on that? Second by Chris. Discussion.
So some of the clarity that we wanted to be sure was there is that under our purview as board, we look at the process and the questions that have come up about the process after the fact. So following up the communication that was occurring, and so what we as a board need to hear about is those interactions with the superintendent and the work around that. It is not, this part of the appeal was not about the resignation or about the exact issues around Andrew Tripp. So the appeal that we're going to hear has to deal with the communication, the interactions, and the process that was followed between the superintendent and that.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments, whether to hear or not the appeal?
I think based on the complaint that was filed with us that names the superintendent and talks about the process, that is a thing that the board can hear. I want to be clear because I know some of the students were really frustrated with how you didn't get to talk last time, but we have to follow these processes and these policies because we have an ethical duty to keep students and staff information very private. It's a really high ethical standard that we are all held to. And no matter what you want to say, positive or negative about another staff member or a student, we never know what the harm could be when you say so publicly in one of our forums. So we cannot allow it ever. And part of transparency, which is one of our strategic plan goals, right? Transparency is about us doing the same thing every single time. So when we take facts and decide how we're going to handle something individually, it means that we will not perform in a predictive manner. So you would never know what to expect from us. So I just wanted you to hear that.
Elizabeth?
I just want to say thank you to the students for speaking out and sharing. I also want to reassure you that we have read your letters. I promise you that. And we take this really, really seriously. It's important for your voice to be heard. And I just want to say that I'm really proud of all of you. It's not easy to do, to speak up, to share your concerns, to shout from the rooftops, if you need to. But I just want to say thank you to all of you, to the parents, to the folks in the community that have shared their ideas, their thoughts, their concerns. It's important. And we have heard, and I promise we are listening.
Patrick.
I just want to add to those comments that, this is how you get involved. You speak up, you make petitions, you ask to be heard. Sometimes you don't get your way, but this is how democracy works. This is how good governance, I think, works. And so I hope you've learned something along the way that if you have people beside you and people with a cause to get together about, that you can amplify your voice and make yourself heard. And so I hope that you feel that way, even if the final outcome isn't satisfactory. I hope that you feel that your work is worthy. So thank you for speaking out and for all the communications, because the only way that this board is effective and reflective of our community is if we hear from you. And so I hope that you feel that you have been heard.
Any other comments? Okay. And I shared with some of you in an email, and I know that not everybody was privy to this email, and I share a quote with all of you, and that last meeting was really hard. So I hope that, again, as like I said at the beginning of the meeting, that we can all be kind. If the board decides right now to take this and we go into the executive session, that we all know that, as Patrick was saying, not everybody is going to be happy, whatever the outcome is. And I'm not trying to predict what that outcome is going to be, but I want us to be conscious that if sometimes we don't get our way, it doesn't mean that we're not being listened to. And the biggest responsibility for us as a board, and like I said I believe it was to you, Tennessee, on my email, is that, like I always bring this book, Strength to Love, to the meetings, because sometimes it's hard. This job is hard for all of us. Not everybody is happy with your decisions, and we have to uphold policy and protect all our students, right? And the different voices and the voices that are not here in the room. That the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. So upholding those policies, even when it's painful or misunderstood in those moments, is that moment for us. So we're here, we're about to take a vote. If we go into an executive session, we're going to ask everybody to leave, and we're going to start with our administrator. We'll give some guidance to that, but I just want you to keep that in mind, that we really care about our students and student voice and student we care about student voice, but we also are the adults on the room too, that are here to protect our students and to protect our staff and to listen to you. So with that, I'm going to call for a vote. We have a motion on the floor and a second. All those in favor of listening to the appeal tonight, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I'm not hearing any. So the motion carries. So we now need to move into executive session for the purpose of personnel. Diana, are you going to read it, or we're going to move into executive session? Can I have it's right here.
What are you looking for this?
Sorry. I got it. Oh, it's actually right here. We're going to move into executive session for the appealing of the superintendent's decision involving Coach Andrew Tripp based on a failure to provide sufficient input affected by the decision. We're just reading your petition, right? So that's why we're going in to talk about the process, not the resignation. With that in mind, could I have a second? I've moved to go into executive session for personnel matter.
Second.
So move.
So, sorry, yeah, so Chris moves and Diane seconds. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. And, oh, actually, we need to include. We're going to do it in phases because we have some of our administrators need to leave a little bit earlier. We're going to start with Stephen, Derek, Heidi, and Caroline, and then we're going to ask the students to come back in with the parents, okay?
Would we like to just go to the art room with the smaller group?
It may be better.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. So then board members online, please call me again.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Okay. We'll be back.
Was there a vote on these?
Oh, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Lisa, did you get that? I'll get it to you right now, or Diane. You got it, Diane? No? Okay, I'll send it to you. And we'll be back in no more than 20 minutes. Yes.
Will you use the microphone for us, though? I'm old. It is not on. You have to push the button. Oh.
I'm good. So I just have a question. If you're going to now hear from the administrators regarding the process, and we want to express how we feel the process was not followed, it's important for us to understand their viewpoint so we can actually answer that specifically.
No.
It puts us at a disadvantage in responding if we don't hear what they have to say about their viewpoint of the process, and also about the actual way the process unfolded. We might have some questions for them to clarify, because it has been a very sort of confusing and poorly lit process.
Yeah, so Clifton, what I would say, and I'm going to rely on our council for this, but I would say is that we're going to listen to the administrators, and we're going to listen to you, and the board is going to make an informed decision with that. This is not a hearing where we would go back and forth and ask the questions. We're not litigating something, but I will let our council, if it's different, and if I'm wrong, happy to be wrong.
No, you're not wrong about that. It's not like a due process hearing, but I think the board can decide to have all the people in together if that's what the board wants to do, so that those concerns can be met, so that the administrators, when they're addressing the process that was used relating to communications about what happened with the resignation of the coach, then people can, the students that are here and the parents that are here can hear the administrators ask those questions. The only real concern for me as counsel is, I mean, there's two things. One is that student information has to be excluded from this. And it's difficult, but the federal law limits the disclosure in most cases of any student records. And so anything relating to how the coach interacted with a student or with students can't be part of this discussion. And the second is personnel matters are generally considered confidential. So that's why what the board is saying is they're going to stick not to actually the content of or the reasons behind a decision to accept a resignation, but rather the process that was used, because the petition actually says that it's an appeal of the superintendent's decision based on a failure to provide sufficient input to those affected, and that violates school policy requiring student-centered and community decision-making. And the petition we also received tonight, which starts by saying we want our coach back, which is really not what the board can get into, but it also says because they've been the subject, they being the teams, have been subject to a misleading and harmful process. So this second petition also relates to the process that was used. And the board is agreeing to hear an appeal, just voted to do that relates to that process. So again, I don't have a legal reason to say that the people can't be in the room at the same time, as long as everybody follows these confidentiality requirements, not to address any student, not to identify a student other than the speaker, and to really try to avoid as much as possible any of the content behind the decision-making that the administration or that the superintendent made?
Well, if there's no legal reason to avoid it, I'd say in the spirit of transparency, openness, and process, it should be heard publicly or within the confines of the executive session by all concerned.
It is to the pleasure of the board. I don't make that decision. I just want to make sure that, first, the administrators feel comfortable. I feel like we should go into executive session and just to protect our administrators, we have to go into executive session. And it's not hiding anything, because otherwise you can't talk to it. So it's not a back and forth between you guys and the administrators. We just want to hear what happened and their version, and then we're going to hear you guys, and then we are going to make a decision into how the process affected you. But we're not making a decision. I just want to make clear, we're not making a decision tonight about, we're not reinstating a coach, right? That is not what this hearing is about. That's not our as a board, we do not hire coaches and we do not fire coaches. It's not in our purview as a board. Today, we're just talking about the process. So we're not hiding anything from you. We're just going to hear from them, and they deserve, I feel like they deserve that. But I also would like to hear from Stephen, even though we're part of the appeal, of how this, you are our superintendent. And I know that this appeal is to you, Stephen, so I'm putting you in the hot seat, and that's not fair, but I would love to hear you speak, and they're your employees too.
I would actually, it's the will of the board in this case, and I'm willing to do whatever the board so pleases. I do think that if I can't at this time know if there's a part of the process that is confidential. But I don't know that there is. I just don't know what the board's questions are, so I don't have any way of really responding.
So I think a way we could also handle it is if we hear differing stories, call folks back and explain what they heard, and just the board can go back and forth as opposed to having the witnesses go back and forth. So we could hear from administrators first, and then hear from other witnesses, and if there's conflict, then we can call on others to try and resolve that conflict.
Well, I think to honor the students, and we're really here about the students. I'm a high school teacher. I know how important that is. I think a public, open process is what's indicated here, and is the best resolution of things. I think any appearance that something is being done secretively and exclusively can only harm this, assembly of kids who have expressed themselves based on your protocols and asked for a fair public hearing of the process. And we're very clear that we're concerned that the process was unfair and is not aligned with the school's values. And I think that the values, there should be openness and transparency in all things, particularly in this, and particularly because the students have felt excluded and in the dark from the very beginning, and that is exactly part of the complaint about the process.
Here's the comment.
Zach.
I think if we're going to bring everyone into the same room together, we need to acknowledge just how limited the subjects are going to be. I look at the huge volumes of letters we received. I look at the huge numbers of signatures on the petition today. These aren't about what was said at a meeting or how many minutes of speaking time someone got. This is about the substance. And our ability as a board is going to get into any of that is going to completely disappear if we are in a situation where we can't talk about anything of substance, because anywhere we turn is going to hit a personnel matter which is confidential, and I don't believe that we all believe that every teacher disciplinary process should be public, or that would hit a student confidentiality. And I think I worry that the students here are going to find that process incredibly unsatisfying if it is really limited to just what was input taken.
Well, what better way to educate them about that fair process than to allow them to participate in it and have
Can we
confidence.
just hold for 1 minute, Clifton? So just a clarification. We are already in executive session. We're in executive session. We're just deciding how we hold this, and we need to get people in the waiting room. Everybody is still here for the very reason that we're talking about confidentiality. We're just moving them. I just noticed them. They're not in the waiting room. So can we hold just 1 second? But it's pretty public, so you can keep talking, but we want to make sure that we are in.
I'm advocating that we all go in together and get the hearing and do it, and then have a conversation, have the administration, have whatever order you want, but I think everybody can be there. Limit the conversation to what we've been talking about, the process, and then it's open and clear. Everybody sees what it is. There aren't any questions. Nobody has to trust anybody about what the conversation was down the hallway. We're all here. We can all see it.
Yeah. Okay. So you want to comment? Okay. So let's say we can, Orca? Yeah. So just, can we close and go, please, before?
Reporting out of executive session, we heard the appeal to policy B22 and agreed that the policy and procedure was followed as written.
Thank you, Diane. A second by Chris?
Second.
Okay.
Second.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you, everybody. Okay, thank you. Okay, and then, like I had said before to the board, I don't plan to have us here until 11 o'clock. It's just not our best time for us to think or do work. So I'm not sitting right next to the superintendent, so I can't quite ask him. But I think that we need to prioritize our packet for tonight. And I will say that in light that we just received all of this information today, it might be easier. We can either do a quick walkthrough through the transition timeline or do everything. Go ahead.
I'll give it very quick. So I know that there's a couple of things I just want to report out on. One of them is the piece about updated documents is we had a couple of members of the community last time say that there were some errors in the documents. Those were fixed and put back up. They were some fairly straightforward. We had K5 where it needed to be K6, a couple of things like that. So those documents were updated and they've been updated online. The board, I think, heard those pieces when we were there. We've also gone to our configuration page of our website. We've been working on that to make sure that the information is there. And I would just say that to the board and to the public, and we'll try to get a better document around it, is that some of the questions are answered in those materials, particularly things like timelines that we've been working on this. So we've been working on this since April of 24. I don't even know where we are now, but yeah. And so there are documents on there. We're trying to make sure that they're arranged in a way that are easy to access. And I know that we're putting together a new FAQ with some of the newer questions. So that is on that page as well, easily identifiable. We've also put some of the Act 73 materials that have come from the state on there as well. We're trying to make it a one-stop shop around some of those pieces. Everything that I've shared with the board around configuration should be on that site at this point in time. It will also be in the board meeting packets and all those as well, but we're trying to organize it for the configuration page. Included in that, and we'll have this up and posted as well on that site, is the transition timeline. There'd been a request to show more detail around the transition timeline. This is trying to show more of that. It is not fully fleshed out, but it gives some more distinct areas. So looking at the decision, leadership, and budget approval process that we're in, the operational transition and program alignment, so some of the things that we need to do around that, the elementary configuration process and some key dates on that, and the grade 6 transition planning. There's also some specific concerns that have been expressed over time, and we tried to just address those. Those will end up in the FAQ as well as questions and answers. And so I don't know that we want to spend a lot of time right now, but just to know that there is a timeline that's being developed for the board to look at and for our community to look at as well that gives some of those key dates around things like how do we think about closure if we're going to, if that's what we choose to do. We need to have some kind of ceremonies, some kinds of celebrations, and also how do we bring together communities and what are those activities that need to occur. It gives broad outlines of those. It's not every date or detail, but where they should fall. And so I hope that this helps start to answer some of those questions. And I also heard very distinctly from the board and the community that we need somebody to help shepherd this process through, and so we would be looking for that as well. Because I would agree, I would gladly have somebody help with this. Yeah.
Thank you, Stephen. I see there's a couple of questions, and before we get moving, I just want to give you guys an idea of what I'm hoping, just as far as agenda, so that we don't get too much. So we can ask a couple of questions to Stephen and then digest this document at our next meeting, so we have our head on that. I do want to spend some time on the outcomes of December 10 meeting. We do need to spend some time on that, and then on the second reading of the policy. So with that in mind, ask your questions thoughtfully. Is that okay?
Yeah, just
Thank you.
super quick, because I've been asked by some community members. The FAQ says coming soon. Any estimate on soon?
We're getting some of the questions together. So there's some that administration will do, and I know the communications committee is doing some. So we're getting some of those. I know one of the biggest questions that has come up is, when are we going to see a budget? So this is the December 10th meeting, is we are going to show two budgets. One budget that shows our current configuration meeting our financial parameters, and the other one is with the configuration as proposed. What would a budget look like for that? And so you will have two side-by-side budgets. It will take us a little bit of time to go through those, but both of those will be there that will show the difference in draft 1 meets our programmatic needs. Draft 2A shows the same configuration that we have now. So did draft 1. I think that was a misconception as well. Draft 1 was our current configuration. And so those two budgets, one shows programmatic, we met our parameters. The other one will show financial, we meet our parameters. And then we will show the configuration budget. Yeah.
So FAQ by like the 10th?
We're going to start putting up some now.
Okay.
Yeah, so by the end of the week, we'll start to have some.
Awesome.
Yeah, and we have a list the list that was sent to us, and we have a document. It's not populated yet with all the answers. Chris, and then we have, Daniel, and then we have Julia, and then Chris.
Two quick questions. The transition budget, the budget for the configuration scenario, will that include both savings and new one-time costs related to the transition? Or are we just looking at the
That budget will just be operational costs. It won't show additional costs of the transition. We'll try to get some estimates of that, but that won't be fully fleshed out. It'll go along with some of these items.
Okay. And then I'm interested in, just as a follow-up question, about a point person for this process. Did you envision that person as like a current admin, like redirected into this role, or a contractor, or a part-time?
I will say that initially I've reached out to some folks within our professional organizations to see if there's somebody out there that's done this work and how they did it. So that was my preliminary look. We also will consider people inside the organization, but most of them have full-time jobs right now. So it would have to be some kind of reassignment if possible. I don't see that as being easily done.
Thanks.
Julia?
So am I understanding correctly that we'll be getting all of this information about budget on the 10th and answers to these other questions on the 10th and being expected to vote on the 10th?
We would get it before the 10th.
Yeah, we're working to get as much of this to the board before the 10th as possible. I'm not going to guarantee that everything is going to be there before the 10th, because our team has been working pretty nonstop, but we're trying to get it all together as soon as we can to the board.
So we lost so much I'm sorry, Flora, we
Yeah,
started
we
talking.
will have a packet. Our goal is always to have a full packet by Friday. So that would be our goal. And there might be that a couple of documents are not coming in until Monday. But
Our business manager is currently sick, and
Yeah.
so we're
Oh.
really working to make sure that we get this to you the first of next week.
Oh.
But I don't want to overpromise
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
I said this at the last meeting, and I just want to say it again, that there are so many questions that have been posed to us by members of our community that I don't have the answers to yet. And I know that the frequently asked questions document is in process. But I think that the time is now to have really clear answers to so many of the questions that are being posed. There are too many questions that are unanswered.
Okay, yeah, and Julia, I'm going to recruit you to help me also with that document, because I think a lot of some of the answers that are asking are already within some of your information, so I'll be in touch. Zach?
I think it's also important for us to remember that this isn't our first time looking at configuration. So I think there's a lot that we already know, because we've looked at these things, and in some cases, predictions we made, have been coming true, and so we have that to lean on. I think we also need to remember the timeline we're up against, and sort of remember that we're not asking the public to vote on the final, on the answer on the 10th. We are being asked, do we want to have an election, knowing that we then have additional time to get information to the public. And I think it's important to not make the decision to not go forward based on what we don't have on the 10th, when that decision isn't going to be made by the public until January.
Great. Thank you, Zach. Okay, so Chris, and then we're going to...
So I don't think we've established when the vote would go for the towns. It could very well be town meeting. And I understand that the time frame in terms of a budget, but we could also, if we need more time and towns need more time, we could push out the time when we present a budget to the public and gauge it. It doesn't have to be on town meeting. And this is a significant decision for two of our communities to make if the configuration proposal is forwarded to them for their vote. So the time should not make us uninformed, is what I'm saying. And we can push it out because we had a budget that failed last year, and we were able to pass the budget before July 1st. So I think the timing is just to make sure we have enough time for a vote and a failed vote to get a revote on a budget. So we have time, and I don't think we should overly rush.
Okay, so we're gonna move into the outcomes for the December 10th meeting, because I think that's sort of what we're starting to talk about. The steering committee met today, did not have everybody in the steering committee because people were busy, but we had 3 of us were at the steering committee with the superintendent, so and if I'm misspeaking, please, steering committee, speak up. And just to frame the conversation, it's not the ultimate decision, but at that meeting, the outcomes of the December 10th meeting will be that we will first vote on supporting the configuration model, because we have moved the configuration model along. We haven't voted on the configuration model of the 3 multi-town schools. We will vote that, then we'll vote on the closure of 1 or 2 schools if necessary, and I'll clear out some of the motion words later. And then we're going to vote on the motion, on the language of the motion for the article for the affected town. Those are the 3 things that we need to do at that next meeting. Some suggestions have been made, for example, which I think is a good one, that one of the options, because we had heard that, from the documents that we already have, that perhaps Calais could stay open because we would have pre-K there. But what would be fair to put in the, or more clear for the community would be to approve the closure of the affected school, in this case, Calais, by June 30th, 2027. So that we're putting two votes, we're being fair, the votes would be different in each community. I'm not saying that we've made a decision, so I'm putting that out there for anybody in the public. What we're just being clear is what decisions we'll be making. So we would have two motions that we will vet by our lawyer, Scott, and one motion would be for Calais, and motion will be for Worcester community. We would still be voting on December 10th, but we would have some language that would come in the packet for you guys to be able to see it. Does that make sense? I just want to clarify, besides our other work and looking at the budget, the steering committee, like we always do, we went through the agenda today and make sure that there was time for public comment and the presentation of the budget. It would include next week, the 10th, it would include the presentation of both the configuration budget, like Stephen said, and the multi-town school. Anything that I missed, steering committee? And Daniel has a question.
Yeah, just a point of clarification. So the language, the warned language draft would say something to the effect that the Calais facility would close by 2027, but it would be voted on at the same time as...
Yeah, because then it would be more clear and more fair to everybody. And then, I don't know, is there, Zach, can you speak to it too?
Yes, so I was the one who proposed the language. I mean, my thinking was that if the plan is to move K through 6 to East Montpelier next year and have pre-K at Calais, that's really a board decision of allocation. But recognizing sort of how that might go over in the community to say, oh, we're not closing the school, but we're just moving most of the kids, to sort of be really clear that this is part of a multi-year plan, and that in order to go forward with this plan, we need to get approval for the part that's 2 years out.
Yeah.
Before we jump in with the moving students, not knowing if that would then pass.
So it just makes it more clear. Go ahead, Chris. Ursula, do you have a hand up? No.
So would the movement of the students depend upon the vote of the town? If the town said
No.
back and close the school, then students wouldn't move? Is that what we're talking about?
No, this is to close, well, Ursula, ask your question, and then I'm going to
I didn't have a question, and now I've forgotten what my clarification
Oh,
was.
okay. So at least in my mind, Chris, it would mean similar to what happened right now. It wouldn't. We can still move the students as long as we have one grade in Calais. It's probably not what the Calais community will prefer, right? If from the emails that we're hearing, I see you, Russ. We're just discussing what the possible outcomes could be, but it would be the fairest way to do it, to put the vote right now, and then if the vote didn't pass, we can still move the students, and we would have to put a vote again the following year, right? That would, go ahead.
Can you explain how it's with the fairness part? I don't understand how.
According to our articles of agreement, we can move. We can keep a school open as long as we have one grade in that school. Pre-K would qualify as one grade in that school. We don't require approval from the electorate to move students out of that school as long as we have one. We do want to do that in collaboration with the community and hoping that they will be with us in that, right? So I'm not disregarding their input, but we have, not we, the board and the administration has the ability to best serve all our kids. So if for us to be able to provide the opportunities and meet our student needs and be able to have consistency in our programming and make sure that our kids have what we've been hoping for, a full-time librarian, a counselor, I'm going to forget the list. Library, especially a full-time art person. If we are really going to operationalize our strategic plan and this is the way to do it. That's one of the flexibilities that we do have in our Articles of Agreement.
So if, but we just said that, I just heard that if the vote, if the town chooses not to close the school, we would still move the students.
Yes.
And so what's the fairness? If we're asking, if we choose to go ahead with the configuration.
Because we wouldn't be closing the
then
school, Patrick.
We then would put it up to the vote for the community, and then we wouldn't honor the result of the vote.
No, but we wouldn't be closing the school.
Right.
We're not closing the school.
But yes, you understand, Patrick.
I do understand.
Yeah,
right.
go ahead, Daniel.
And as someone who supports the configuration, I have a major objection to that. I feel like it very directly flouts the will of the town, and I'm under no illusion that, convincing the town of Calais at this point is a challenge, that configuration is in the best interest of the school district as a whole and the students of Calais in particular as well. But to do what that suggests is, and I had thought we had reached more or less a consensus at the last meeting that we didn't want to do that. We didn't want to take that technical action that technically our bylaws do allow us to take, because it feels too unresponsive and too insensitive to sort of the public will.
Natasha.
Yeah, I'm just going to come out and say, that sounds like a threat. That's what it sounds like. And as just a member of the board for the district, that does not sit well with me. As a member of the Worcester community, it definitely does not sit well with me. And so, I want to be supportive of the configuration process as long as it is transparent and fair and not threatening. But when that statement is made, it comes across as a threat.
So, and I don't mean the statement as a threat. I think the question that you were asking was like, would we still move the students? So for example, and what we were trying to do right now is just the outcomes of our next meeting. So we would decide, depending on that vote, what we do. If both communities vote not to close their schools, we would have to revert to a budget that I don't have the numbers, so I don't know. We potentially, from what we are hearing and from the December 1st letter, I haven't seen any numbers. I want to make clear that we know the numbers from before, how far behind we were, right? And I think we can all acknowledge that. So we would have to decide, do we keep two schools open and not do the movement and not serve our students? I don't know. That was going to be a decision that we all have to take the risk. I think part of the reason that people elect us is to make us, and I don't want to say student-centered, but I'm saying student-centered again. I know we had that discussion before, but that we're making the best decision in behalf of all our students, so we can serve all our students. So I don't mean that as a threat. I mean it's about serving all our students, having the courage, I would say that, having the courage to do what we need to do to serve all our students. I know that there's a lot of adults in the room too, and we all represent, we're all here to serve our students. How more clear?
And Flora, I understand that, I do, but when it said the towns could vote to not close their schools, but we still can move students, and we can move all the students except for one grade, that doesn't come across as we want to do what's best for our communities. So I'm not saying that that's what we would, that's what the decision would be. I'm just saying that right now we're trying to be transparent and communicate with our communities in a way that allows them to make informed decisions if the vote does go to the town, and to be engaged and to feel like the school board does care about all of the students and all of the communities. And when we make statements like that, that is not the message we're sending. So I just want us to be really deliberate and really thoughtful about how we are communicating what we are trying to do to ensure that we are being fiscally responsible, and also, first and foremost, I hope, doing what is best for all kids in all of our communities. So I just, again, that's how it came across to me. And I want to be as engaged and as thoughtful about this process as possible. So I just want us to be very deliberate and thoughtful about the words that we use and how we're communicating our message.
Yeah, and I want to make clear that I was not making a threat. That's all I'm going to say. And I know that you're recognizing that. I'm not making a threat. I'm just trying to explain decisions. So Daniel, you had one more thing. Otherwise, I'll go to Diane, who's been patiently waiting.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I said was said more articulately by Natasha, but I would just add that to me, it feels like leaving that on the table does a lot of harm to the work that I have put in to try to explain to people the potential benefits of this configuration and the trust that I've worked to build somewhat successfully, mostly unsuccessfully, with a lot of my constituents and a lot of the constituents in the other towns. And I just can't accept that we leave that on the table at this point in time. I mean, I understand that our budget constraints are very significant, but
so I'm not
again,
saying
I
that we're
just refer
leaving that,
back to what
I'm not saying that
Natasha
we're
said.
leaving that on the table at all. You heard the outcomes of next meeting are the three, putting out the three things that I mentioned. We're not going to decide that at our next meeting. And part of putting this motion out was also to be more transparent with our community, right? If we were going to, because it would be worse to not put it out to vote. We wouldn't be clear with them. Then Diane and then Patrick.
So one of the things, though, that's going to be critical for us as we consider it is to understand what that budget is that will meet the financial parameters that we know will be pretty dramatic and drastic, and then also what the realistic budget is. And what I also just heard is that might be tricky to get to us by next week. So I just want to have us all realizing we need time to be able to look at that and to understand what it is that we are setting forward into motion should any one of these pathways be picked. And so, and it's deep respect for the hard work that's happening, but also that we need to be mindful that we have all that information, the budget information is going to be critical.
I think it also comes down to, are we going to take away programming from students that currently have it? Or are we going to move students around to different buildings and give more access and more programming to the students who currently don't have enough?
Okay, so should I repeat what we were doing for outcomes? Patrick, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm back on outcomes. I think my question is about the fairness and what you were saying, Flora, has to do with what Zach was saying about the wording for a potential, the discussion about closing Calais. Is if we're not going to be coy with moving students around, do we need to reconsider putting Calais on the table? If we need to have students in Calais for next year for pre-K, is it more transparent to put that off the table, to put closing Calais off the table, instead of saying close Calais in 2 years? That was where my point comes from. We can discuss that next meeting if you want, but that's my.
No, we need to put in. So Stephen.
So I think, if I'm okay with our steering committee meeting, I think there are a couple of things that we're really just trying to make sure that we do in that discussion. The first is that we want to make sure that we affirm that this is the configuration that we want to move forward with. So the board, just the board affirming that process then can set in motion the additional things that need to happen. One of them, in the way that it's laid out right now as a model, and yes, I know there's a lot more detail for you to decide whether or not that model works. But if we were to go forward with this model, the first thing we would need to do is the Worcester community would need to vote to close their building. Yep. The Calais community We understand the difficulty of saying, we're not really closing you the first year because we need to leave the pre-K there because of the model that we've looked at and not moving our sixth grade until the next year. But we also want to make sure that the community has input. If that's not the direction that the community wants to go, we need to know that sooner. Okay. And so we would be asking them to vote for the following year closure at the same time so that we have a clear picture of where we're at with all of that. What we do then, because of our needs for configuration for any grade level, I mean, we've already said in our first budget that the kindergarten needs to go over to East Montpelier. We've already said in our first budget that if Worcester were not to vote, that we still need to take the pre-K and the K to Rumney. And so we've already said those things. Those are some configuration decisions we have already talked about according to the first budget. And then from once those two votes are done, that will give us the information, hopefully sooner, so that we can then make a decision on which budget do we need to send to the voters for approval. And so, and this is certainly the board's prerogative. I made a note to myself even, is working backwards from, I hate to say July 1st, but working backwards, what are the voting windows that we have associated with that, to Chris's point? And that's the board's prerogative in communicating with your communities and us making sure that we have the information we need. I mean, I was surprised. I hadn't even thought about the fact that we might not have a budget vote on town meeting day if we were trying to be more deliberate. But that's a decision for the board to make as you're getting information and able to make those decisions. And my job is to make sure that you're getting as much information as possible so that you can make them. And we will do our best to do that.
So clarifying questions.
Wait, Chris, Elizabeth, you had your hand up.
All right, I'm going to try to succinctly say this. I've been thinking a lot about what we've been talking about, and the conversation around pre-K being at Calais kind of gets my brain thinking more about budgets as well, and what that would look like from a budget standpoint should Calais stay open and have a pre-K operating a large building with just a pre-K in the classroom or in the school. And so one of the things I think about is, you know, if Doty chooses to close, they may or may not, but Calais chooses to stay open, I would prefer to see a 4-school budget, because I think the information we keep seeking is the possibilities of what might happen should a town choose not to close the school. And maybe that includes Doty. I'm not sure, but I do feel like there's still some missing pieces, and so I am of the school of thought that, like, let's look at a 3, a 4, and a 5 model, or however. And I know it's asking a lot, but these are big things, and these are going to have a ripple effect for many, many years for many, many people. And I want to be able to say, I support this, whether it's closure for Calais, I'm just going to throw that out there, or not. We have got to do this. We have got to get the information. And I just feel like choices like moving a pre-K to one building has a budget impact. Choices like leaving a school open in that building has a budget impact. It's probably not going to get us out of the mess because this is tough. The numbers are awful. But when I think about impact, I think phasing is much less painful and can be much more intentional.
Chris?
So Stephen, under the scenario that you just described, would the Calais students that are not, you said first grade or pre-K?
Pre-K.
Okay. Would all those other students be transported to some other school, other than those?
Okay, so which scenario?
Well, if this upcoming year, wait, let me finish. Upcoming year that we're talking about, and you talk about having the students, the younger students at Calais.
Correct.
Or the students who are not the younger students staying at Calais going to East Montpelier.
We are modeling that as our other draft budget for December 10th. Right, so the 3-school model is that, and combining the Worcester and Middlesex communities at Rumney.
Okay, does that model take effect even if Callis doesn't vote to close?
So that becomes a discussion for the board.
Okay.
Okay, so are we all in the same page about the outcomes on December 10th? Okay, so now we're gonna move in, now that I moved everything, we're gonna move into policy.
Okay. We have first reading for selection and access of instructional materials policy.
Chris, talking to the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. We have, I'm sorry. Our first reading is for D23, selection of and access to instructional materials. Stephen, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, this is very much modeled on the access to library materials, but it is specific to instructional materials. And this is one of the recommended policies from, not a required, but a recommended policy. We felt like this was important in order to make sure that there was a process by which materials could be challenged, but also very clearly we have prohibited reasons for removal. So that is very much in line with the library materials policy, right. But this includes all instructional materials. It just broadens our coverage, essentially.
And the same procedure for removal from the library materials applies to this one as well?
Yeah, so you see there's a draft procedures for this that's there for you to see. That's not a part of your policy, but just so you have an idea, very much modeled on the library materials, where the library materials would include the librarian and principal. We also bring in our director of curriculum instruction and assessment if we were reviewing any instructional materials.
So any questions on this as it stands? Zach?
Yeah, so this actually relates to the library materials as well. I mean, just the ban on removing things, due to the author's point of view, concerning problems and issues of our time, that's very, very broad. I have reading that, I have a very hard time imagining anything successfully getting challenged, aside from just sort of straight up inaccuracy. And I just wanted to make sure, is that the intent of the policy?
I would say that it was the intent of our library policy, so it's in here for the instructional materials, and that is actually the decision of the board.
Yeah.
And it's a protective policy.
Yeah.
Very clearly based on what we've seen around the country, and having people challenge materials and trying to have books taken out. So it is intentionally broad.
No, I recognize that. I just want to make sure that I wanted to make sure that we are all recognizing that it's not just protecting the things that we like that someone else is challenging. It's also going to protect some things that some of us may be very uncomfortable with at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's okay. Freedom of,
Yeah. Okay, so we'll bring that back for second reading next meeting, or maybe not the next one. We might be occupied otherwise. Next up is our second reading for student conduct and discipline. Any questions on this one? Okay. Next we have and I'll move them as a slate. I'll ask for a motion to move them as a slate after we go through all of them. Next is C45, our bus discipline policy, which we did not change much other than, I don't think
we did add in this policy just that we also have a policy F26 about security cameras because there are cameras on the buses, and so we added in a reference to that policy within this one. That was the biggest change.
Okay, next up, we have D8, selection of library materials, policy and procedure.
May look familiar. This is a required policy where the other one was a recommended policy, but the library one is a required.
Next up, we are also moving to rescind D22, the Library Media Center and selection and reconsideration, because it's now covered by D8. And also move to rescind B31, educator supervision and evaluation for probationary teachers, because those are covered in other places.
So the ed quality standards and our contract already outline all the things that are in this policy. So those are already covered within the rules that we have to follow as a school and our negotiated agreements that we have with our teachers.
Right.
So this policy was redundant to those things. Yeah. And I would just say that those things could change more quickly than our policy has changed in the past, so there was a conflict of language at this point in time as well.
In particular with the contract negotiation.
Yeah, particularly with the contract, which would supersede this anyway.
Okay.
So is there a motion to adopt C15, C45, and D8, and rescind policy D22, and rescind policy B31?
So moved.
But I thought that you're making the motion because you're the chair.
I'm asking for the motion.
You can ask for the motion, but you're making the motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're making the motion and Patrick is seconded. Thank you.
I think I'm
All
going to take
those-
Ursula's second.
It's okay.
I got Ursula's second.
Okay. She's good.
All in favor?
Any discussion? Go ahead.
Yeah, with
Danny.
apologies, I was just rereading the one on conduct and discipline, and I have a question about the second to last paragraph. The superintendent or designee shall ensure the analysis of student discipline data to identify and address any disproportionalities in discipline. I guess I'm curious, shall ensure the analysis. What is that? What's that intended to involve? And could the language be more pointed, or is the intended purpose that the board receive that analysis?
So the board is to receive an analysis of discipline. That's one of the reports that should come to the board.
Okay.
And so this is intended to make sure that the superintendent addresses any disproportionality in that data that's brought. The board gets a broad view of all of that data, not the specifics.
But the report on discipline is not, it's not covered by this policy. That's a separate.
That's in a separate
general
spot, yeah.
practice.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all of this in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Okay, so
you.
now let's move to the consent agenda, and I need a motion to approve the minutes. Go ahead, Ursula.
I move that we approve the minutes of November 19th, 2025.
I need a second. Thank you, Elizabeth. And then Julia, you had an edit to the
Oh,
minutes?
I had a really small edit. Something that I said was attributed to Elizabeth Brown, and I don't have the reference for it right now. I don't have it open.
So are you okay with the minutes as they are, or do you want to?
It should just be amended to say that I said that thing that I can't find in the minutes.
Okay, I'll give it
How's
to
that
you.
sound? Friendly amendment.
So all those, it's a,
Actually, can I just say with great appreciation, Lisa, you are sticking through this.
yeah.
I didn't hear what was said.
Diane said with great appreciation for Lisa. She's just, her mic was not on.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The what?
I made the motion, somebody that was.
Elizabeth, yeah. Okay, so they have been amended, so are you okay with that, Ursula?
Yes.
Thank you. Elizabeth? Yes. Okay, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, I think the ayes have it. I didn't see any opposition. And we have some future agenda items there in both of those. I don't know, Patrick, did you see that? And they're going to the ed quality, so now they're in the right spot. Any board reflections quickly at the 11th hour? Do you want to do it now? Wait, at the next meeting, it's your choice. Okay, so there's nothing.
I should just announce so that people know, in the spirit of, I just want to announce that I'm not running for another term, and that I intend to carry out my responsibilities for this current term. And I wanted to say it early so people have an opportunity to share that information, and whoever wants to run and get on the ballot. But I did want to say a few words about feeling grateful about this opportunity to serve students and teachers and staff and administration and the community, and to work with all of you amazing people. This is really difficult. And I have a lot of appreciation and respect for what you do and what goes into this. And especially you, Flora, I just feel like you are such a good role model, leading the charge and showing grace and respect and dignity, not just for other people, but for yourself in the face of strong emotions and feelings. And just to kind of echo all, this quick snippet summary of what we're weighing as we move forward in this decision-making, continuing to focus on our goals of expanding programs in an equitable way and leveraging resources and, being creative and adaptive and growth-oriented as we think about how to ethically make these really difficult decisions that are going to feel sad and uncomfortable, whatever we decide. So I just appreciate what will continue, and I have hope and belief that it'll be a positive outcome for the students, because I know that you all deeply care about the current students and the future generations of students in public education. So, see you next meeting.
Thank you, Amelia.
Yeah.
That was really nice. Lila, we're going to move into public comments unless there's more reflection from the board. Good. Good. I see. Lila, you don't have a hand up, but I'm assuming you are ready. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. I have to say I was very confused and concerned about the discussion about what votes would be offered to the communities where there would be reconfiguration that essentially closes the schools. I do not think that giving Calais a vote as to whether to close in 2 years and letting them say, no, they don't want to, is a realistic approach if the intention is to essentially close the school in the first year. And I think that moving all the students except for the pre-K students to East Montpelier is essentially a closure of Calais. And it's going to be seen as a runaround against letting Calais have a realistic vote. I would really urge you not to structure your vote that way. If it's part of a two-part process, then you should make it clear that the vote would be to make this major change in the first year and then totally close the school in the second year. So I really hope that there's, if the board decides to go ahead with this, that there's more thought given to what kind of a vote Calais could realistically have. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lila. We have two other hands up. Rachel?
Good evening, folks. I feel like this board, most of whom, other than obviously Daniel, Elizabeth, and Michelle, don't live in Calais. are about to make a decision that is not just about our school, but about our town, and that can send our town into a death spiral because it will discourage, as we've talked about before, young families from moving to Calais. This year, we have welcomed many young families. Our school population grew this year, which is not what last year's budget projections, what last year's census projections suggested. So we're defying what you all predicted, right? I really appreciate Elizabeth suggesting you look at 3-school, 4-school, and 5-school options. I would also say one of the many suggestions the community offered to you was look at pre-K through 3 in one building, 4 through 6 in another building. Look at pre-K through 5 in one building and using East Montpelier as a middle school. And I am so disappointed that even though the community offered all of these suggestions, having read the configuration committee's minutes from February when you all got back together to now, the only configuration you looked at was the one that closes the same 2 schools that you all voted not to have be the configuration last year. And I'm asking you to reject this plan. It's not consistent with what the Act 73 task force recommended. It's not good for our towns.
Thank you, Rachel. Sophia?
Because I would echo every single thing that Rachel just said, I'm going to make a separate statement, which I don't think has been covered yet. I want to highlight the group of students who would be most deeply impacted by this plan, which is the micro generation of 3rd through 6th graders who were already hit hardest by COVID disruptions. Younger students don't remember those years in the same way, but this specific age band carries an extremely high level of anxiety and instability because of what they have already lived through. If we wait for Act 73 implementation instead of rushing a major restructuring now, we could avoid placing yet another upheaval on the children who have already borne the brunt of the last 5 years. If this plan moves forward, my 4th grader will attend 6 different schools or learning environments because of COVID and decisions like these. And these kids would move from their current school, specifically the 4th graders, to an interim school, and then after just 1 year, be shipped off again. They deserve so much more than this. They deserve to be involved in an extensive community impact study that looks at what this does to these kids and everything that Rachel said as well, what it does to families, what it does to the town, what it does to property taxes, what it does to community, which is extraordinarily special in Worcester. And these kids do not deserve another seismic disruption on top of what they have already endured. Please slow this process down and do the research and due diligence required. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia. Russ?
Well, thank you very much. Sorry about my histrionics earlier.
No worries. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think that the one thing that I'd like to add here is that the language is important and the way it's presented. That got raised earlier that Flora, that the way that you approached what you're obviously very excited about with extra programming and librarians and so on and so forth, you're looking at as a really great opportunity for the kids, but those aren't being presented as incentives to the community. It's, we have the power to move your kids and we're going to do it because it's what's best for them. That's what we're hearing. And it's not. We don't agree with that. There's other components besides programming. I run the Worcester Lunch, and those older classes at Doty come over and they cook the meal every week. They serve it. They interact with their community. They're growing roots there. They feel very proud to be a part of that program. And I don't want to see that lost. I mean, it's going to be a really big impact to us to lose those kids. And this is hard. This is really, really hard. And I don't want to take this, I don't want to, any kind of a cavalier language that we're going to do this because we can. It's going to end up in a power struggle. And I don't want that, right? It's just, we just don't need that. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Okay, those are all the hands right now. We really appreciate community members that were able to stay so late. Thank you for your patience and for being here tonight. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn. Go ahead, Ursula.
adjourn.
And second by Michelle. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night. Thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jen and Julia and Amy for enduring, and Orca. Thank you, too.